Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and I'm going to talk about our project, Partisaning, and about projects we've done in Moscow and a couple of other places. Oh, now I can't see presentation.
You can see.
Uh, yeah, and I'm going to talk about one project we've done in Brazil in 2013 as part of Sao Paulo Biennale for architecture. It's going to be last project. And I'm going to start with how I got involved into street art. It was, please, next slide. Uh, so I started to make graffiti and street art in 1997, 1990, no, the previous year, 1997, 1998. And it was more or less typical American style graffiti. It was one of the first bombing on metro cars in St. Petersburg and in Moscow, and it was more or less typical. Please, next slide. So after a while, we decided that we need to move on and start to make something more Russian. And at that point, I believe that new wave of street art evolved in comparison to more subcultural, connected to hip hop culture, graffiti. In many other places of the world, people started to discover more site-specific and context-oriented street art. And one of the amazing examples from Brazil is Os Gêmeos, and in 1999, I think they visited Europe for the first time, Germany, and their works that they've done with Munich-based street artist Lumit. It was impressed. I was really impressed with the way they worked with context, both with social context and using texture of walls and places they did their works. So it was also very impressive for me. And I did a series of artworks in Moscow, such this example of Free Telephone, making fun of taxophones, phone that you need to pay money for. And I also tried to connect it to both context and using history of Russian illustrations or books. And I tried to make this art more accessible for just normal people, not just people who got involved in street art. Please, next slide. After a while, I started to work with galleries, trying to kind of move street art from the streets to galleries, trying to get more input from art world. And this is one of the examples of work that I've done for the galleries in 2007. And I got nominated for prestigious art prize in Moscow, but also at that point I realized that I'm not really interested in working with all this prepared audience, and I really wanted to make something more fresh for streets, but not just making something beautiful, but trying to also change the city with the art I do. So it was in 2009, and in 2010, please next slide, I come up with the idea of creating something more useful for the city. It was a time when Moscow government announced a new master plan for Moscow city. According to this plan, they wanted to build more highways, they wanted to destroy more historical, beautiful buildings, and it was pretty much like neoliberal gentrification of the city, and people in Russia and in Moscow start to realize that they're losing public spaces, and with car domination and optimization of society, we're losing this sense of community and city. So I published this map of the city, DIY cycling map of the city of Moscow, and it was first um, and basically this map kickstarted massive campaign for cycling infrastructure for the city. And during next 4 years, it kickstarted dramatic changes in the city. Later on, please next slide. Later on, we also started to make DIY infrastructure for the city, such as cycling infrastructure, making cycling routes in most accessible and comfortable places for cycling. Please next slide. And then we started to work more closely with different activists, environmentalists, urbanists, and other people who was interested in creating more livable cities. And then we also noticed that this idea of unsanctioned repair for the city and what we called participatory urban replanning is evolving, this movement evolving in Russia, not only in Russia but globally. And we come up with the idea of making a new term, partisaning, and we also started the website Partisaning. So what is partisaning? Please next slide. So partisaning is not only our name of our website and collective, but also it's a term that we propose to use to describe these new art and activist practices which strategically challenge, shape, and reinvent urban and social realities. And especially this term was really up to date for situation in Russian society, because after 20 years of individual values, people, new generation of people realize that new economical realities, neoliberal economies, and capitalism actually ruining a city, and we should revalue our socialist past, but we need to think of new collectivism, not just collectivism that was forced in Soviet times, but free will activist collectivism based on new, probably post-capitalist or any other forms of spirit of free will and cooperation. So please next slide. And it was the time when we had upcoming elections for Russian parliament, and many of our friends and me, myself, we've been politicized before elections, and as part of our initiative, we created a series of street signs using the same tactics of DIY navigation for the city, but also raising really important political issues. And using satire, we tried to tease society and politics by creating these street signs. For example, this street sign was installed on the Red Square, the main square of Moscow, where on the one hand it's prohibited to cycle, on the other hand this tandem is how people called Mr. Putin and Medvedev, our previous president, who wanted to just switch their places, and people immediately got the idea of what I meant, but it was also not just straightforward, stupid propaganda, but funny, satirical way of bringing new agenda and also raising people's awareness about upcoming elections. Please, next slide. Then in St. Petersburg, I see Handycam. Okay, I I don't know what's this. I hope you see zone of greater tolerance. Yeah, okay. It's another part of another series of street signs in St. Petersburg, where recently our local government passed new laws against different forms of self um, expression in public spaces and other stupid laws that actually no one followed. But in any case, we had and still have different social problems that we need to really work on. And it's impossible to solve all these problems with one step, and we need to really work from the grassroots level. And that's what these zones of higher, greater tolerance, for example, is about. Please, next slide. Um, Another project we've done for massive protest in Moscow at Bolotnaya Square, where we took part in many of these protests. And one of our projects that we've done with our friend from Berlin, Arthur van Balen, who's making series of project inflatable tools for protests, and he's making these projects in different parts of the world. Please, next slide. I'm going to show you the result of what we've done for the protest. It's the huge silver inflatable soul that is symbolizing this soul for corruption. And in Russian discourse, this soul is immediately understood by people what it is. And it was pretty much fun to walk on the protest with such a huge inflatable tool. Please, next slide. During the protests, we also realized that we need to promote anarchist idea of self-organization, and we wanted to highlight the idea that it's never going to work if we're going to change the president for the new leader. We need to really focus on creating our own cities and our society from grassroots level, and we need to self-organize. And to show it, we just start to make really simple interventions, such as creating zebra crosswalks. So here we just painted the crosswalk in place where people really cross the road, and it's pretty much safe with the zebra crosswalk, but without the zebra, people still crossing it, but without this zebra and a sign that we also did, it's not that obvious, and we just tried to make it more safety. Please, next slide. And it's interesting how people reacted to, and government reacted to it. For example, here they created kind of anti-zebra, really black zebra, so they painted black our white zebra. But in many other places, they actually substituted our DIY zebras with real official ones. Please, next slide. Also, it's not always about improving the city, but sometimes it's impossible to change and fix something, and it's better to disimprove the city. And we start to make these stupid parking lots, which is impossible to use, highlighting the idea that we have no more space for cars in the city. Please, next slide. So with these interventions, we realized it's okay to just promote our own opinion, but to involve more people, we need to work on more participatory way, involving more people and trying to highlight their problems and promote their idea and give voice to those people who have no voice in political discourse. So, for example, this project, we was nominated for Global Public Art Review Art Prize, and this project is about involving people in creative participatory urban replanning in Moscow. So we started to install mailboxes painted bright colors with provocative statements and questions, so people could write our mails, proposing ideas how to fix their neighborhood, and then we use these mails to actually do interventions, or we pass these mails to young municipal deputies who was really needed this support from locals. So we also tried to create connection between activists, local people, and young municipals. Please, next slide. We made a lot of projects, and obviously can't highlight all of them, but I'm going to talk about two projects where we try to involve more people. This project I done myself last summer in camp for teenager in 300 kilometers from Moscow. It's this camp located in really beautiful public art resort in forest, and I was working in this camp with kids, creating art project with them. And as an art project, we created Dead Horsefly Society. It's secret society with psychological help for kids, and we discussed a lot of important problems for kids, such as sex, drugs, relationship with parents, divorces, and many other people that adults try to avoid talking and discussing with their kids. And mostly I was just moderating discussion and gave voice to these kids to discuss these important issues between them. Please, next slide. So here you see our location for our gatherings, daily gathering in this camp. It's old place as a cemetery for pets, home pets, dogs and cats and other small animals. And it was far away from the camp, and that's where we met with kids, and everything we were discussing was completely secret from adults and other people. And we gave oath that no one's going to tell anyone to other people about what we discussed. And I just tried to moderate discussion, so we had no any forms of discrimination based on gender, sexuality, or any other forms of discrimination. Please, next slide. We came up with many ideas. For example, this small protest where kids was protesting against too sweet tea, that one of the teachers took someone's iPhone from the kid who was using it too much, and someone wanted more sugar, and yeah, and basically the demand for more sugar was one of the central, because in this camp sugar became something like cigarettes in prison, and having candies, kids could, for example, make a temporary tattoo or buy wooden weapons such as nunchuck or knives or something else. So this issue of lacking of sweets was also highlighted with another initiative we come up with during this camp. Please, next slide. So as I told you in the beginning, this project was done in big public art resort, and once a year in summer, in July, this resort hosts big event with more than 3,000 visitors from Moscow and other cities, who was able to see new public art works in this camp. And together people had to pay, and had to pay money, about maybe 20 euros. And we decided that we also need to charge cars and people and adults who's getting into this camp, because we perceive this as our territory. So we created our own guerrilla illegal stop in the forest. Please, next slide. So you can see this this blog post in the forest before the official one. So that's where we stopped cars getting into the territory and charge them with candies and other food that we could eat or exchange for tattoos and weapon in our camp. Please, next slide. So we can see some candies we got. Please, next slide. And you see it's our secret hideout in forest that we also ate and distributed our candies between people. Please, next slide. It's in another slide. I don't know, maybe you already changed it. Okay, and then next slide, you should see this guy on a skateboard with football. Yes, that's it. So this is the last project I'm gonna tell you about. This project we've done as a part of Architectural Biennale in Sao Paulo in 2013. At the bottom right screen, you can see the link. It says partizaning.org/DIY-Olympics. You can see the whole project that we done as part of our workshop, 10 days workshop in Sao Paulo, more than a year ago. And this project reflects the situation and the topic for this grassroots biennale of DIY tactical urbanism, and also we try to highlight this situation with Olympics and World Cup, because we have pretty much similar situation in Russia, that we had Olympics a year ago and we have football World Cup in 2 years in Russia. So basically we're pretty much synchronized with Brazil, and it's very funny, and we have the similar situation of huge budgets being spent for these huge events, and now we're facing crisis, and the prices in grocery stores going up pretty much because of these Olympics we had a year ago. So next slide. So what we've done as our project, we created actually DIY sport infrastructure with kids from one of the squads in Sao Paulo. We created special signs and infrastructure, and also we used special uniforms similar to what people use at crosswalks, like some special people in Sao Paulo were using it, and also the yellow ones and also red ones for cycling infrastructure. So we decided that we can use the turquoise blue color and uniform to make people play funny, stupid games that we come up with kids. So you can see Shreya, one of our participants. She's from India, and she's also part of our collective. Next slide. So here you can see lots of different games, most of them with balls, and you can see a huge skateboard that we also used as in Washington Park, where first huge protest started, where people protested against raising of prices for public transportation from 3 reals to 3.20. I think you all know about it. And that's where we also worked with skateboarders, and we use these huge skateboards we've done to play together. So you can see all these sports at this website, partizaning.org/DIY Olympics. And also, please, next slide. We translated our DIY tactics game in Portuguese for Biennale, and that's the game. You can download it and print it yourself. It's A3 black and white poster. You can use it as simple cardboard game. you need dice and anything to like coins or maybe special. I don't know how to call it, to play this game and basically learn different tactics, how basically you can use street art and different interventions and um, um, performances to change the city from really grassroots level. And you can download this game from the next slide, and it's going to be the last slide. Please, next and the last slide. I want to say obrigado, and at the bottom you can see the link to our website, and if you add slash, that's where you can download the game in Portuguese. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Meg. And now I think we can ask some questions for you. And I'm going to ask the first question. Can you just tell us more about the situation of with street art in Russia? So what's happening there? What's the problem with street artist? Who's the main artist? What's the most interesting project that you can tell us?
Mm-hmm. So we have really interesting scene in different cities. In Moscow, in St. Petersburg, in Nizhny Novgorod, in Yekaterinburg. Also, we have connections with street artists from Kiev, Ukraine, and some other places. And it's interesting and similar. I think we all live in new order, like globalized world where places such as Russia or Brazil, we always focus on what's going on in Europe or especially United States, and we always think that we always underestimate what's going on in our places, in our street art scenes, etc. So basically, we have amazing scene in Russia, street art scenes, and when I was in Brazil, I realized it's one of the greatest street art scenes and interesting compared to what's going on in other places. And I think we need to, instead of like thinking that all the best things happening in like all the centers, realize that probably the most interesting places in terms of street art and urban activism is happening now in places such as Moscow, Rio de Janeiro, or Sao Paulo, or maybe Mexico City, or maybe Istanbul. And if you want to know more about what's going on, especially in Russia, but not only, you can read more on our website, because one of our tasks is also to highlight what's going on in Russia, but also build more relationship with other places in the regions. So, for example, yeah, it's just we have one of the interviews with amazing street artists from Sao Paulo we met when we was in Sao Paulo. But coming back to your question, we have really interesting street artists, and some of them work with more traditional graffiti style. Some of them work with more Russian style. Some so different artists. But also, what is really important for Russia, we have really logocentric culture, which is that we have like amazing history of literature, and so that's why probably many of street artists are using words and letters in their work, like raising really important questions, not just visually, but using words, and that's probably why it's sometimes really hard to understand the context and like how poetic some of the works are.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Do you want to ask?
Yeah, we'll interact. Hey, Mike, it's me again. Some things, it was a nice presentation, and The first thing that you said about how much the Brazilian reference has impressed you in the beginning, it's something that is very nice for us to hear because we also feel it, like living in big cities like São Paulo or like Rio, like Belo Horizonte. It's amazing to see how in the last 10 years or something the thing really, blow up and there's a whole new generation coming at the same time that the guys that was graffiting since the end of the now they are like being treated as kind of masters and having the chance to expose their art all around and it's a kind of recognition which is very important once that we are in a contest where the roots of all this urban art scene it's very strongly related with pichação and it's a kind of urban art made at his most by poor people from the peripheries of the big cities, and these people actually have lots of trouble doing these arts, criminalized and pursued by the cops. So it's for us it's nice to see that a kind of resistance and that it's having some kind of echo globally. And the second thing, it's for us it's also very inspiring to see your work. It's similar to lots of things that we do here. I think we are not so focused on this question about the specific language of the urban art, but we are very connected with the idea of this meme war or of this imaginarium fight, and how can you use the streets as a new kind of political platform. So being here, watching the images and the situations that you are creating is very nice to us. Like this thing on the bicycle, for example, São Paulo is living exactly the same thing now. The mayor is trying to build cycleways all around, and you have rich people and high middle class being against it, doing campaigns, asking for money, and we need to work this kind of questions also. And the third thing, it's about on really keep this connection going on. I think that you have an opportunity, as you said, to come to São Paulo, right, and experiment things there. But I think that once that we have now this kind of platform to work together, I believe that in a second come we can do much bigger things, and let's stay in touch in this sense. There's a whole calendar of things that we are connected doing here along the year, and we will share, we will be in touch to somehow to bring here to interact live.
Thank you. Yeah, Pixel Shower is an amazing thing. We just recently posted an article about it, but unfortunately in Russian. But it was one of the things we were really impressed. But what I want to say is that we always need to be careful about how city officials and capitalism can use our works. And one of the ways is what actually Os Gêmeos doing now. And I just got an opportunity to meet these guys from Os Gêmeos in Moscow 2 years ago, where they introduced their cover for a bottle of Hennessy cognac, which is like super expensive cognac for really rich people. And for me, it was really controversial that they started doing their works in a really poor district of Sao Paulo, and then now they making these designs for Hennessy, and they got, as I heard, $1 million for doing it. And they said that they're doing it to make their art, but as I see, many of the artists, such as Os Gêmeos or people like JR or Banksy or other people, they're being commercialized and used by art world in all the ways. And one of the ways to fight against this art market and commercializing of street art is to create something like Pixel, but on the other hand, by creating something such this art that people do not really understand, and it's only just like rebel against the system, but not bringing new agenda. It's also kind of way of escape from the fight. It's just creating your like rebel world, but this world is not gonna succeed. It's just creating small resistance zone, and we need to fight. We need to fight for our streets. We need to rebel this. We need to say that we have the right to the city, and by art we can actually fight this war against capitalism, against any forms of discrimination and domination, such as Putin's dictatorship or any other forms of discipline. And using art is the only way, in my opinion, is the only way of creating a way of fighting against it. But also we need to really work hard to involve more people, more specialists from all the different fields, such as urbanists, environmentalists, and other people who's also interested in the cities in this fight. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Do you have a question? One more question.
Congratulations. My name is Paulo. Congratulations for project. I see art more activism use it for challenge and to in front of difficult and 21 hectare society is the better to see many projects around the world about this. In Brazil, the graffiti and the other arts usual the discourse for to do. It's so good to see your project. It's this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulo. So, Jean, do you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I will get into for. Hi. I like so much your intervention on the street. I think it's a way to do the people's get off of routine or automatic thinkings of by day, you know, when they see a different thing, an uncommon thing on the urban space, we can take him and get off this automatic and put one new things on his thinking and do a different things for his head, on his head. I good so much, and I think we can think about a continuation of this moment, doing actions of Interact Brazil and the streets. Yeah, I think all the world today have much things in common of the meaning of the comportamento is like on the way of the peoples do the day by day. Thank you for participating in initiative, and it's not a question but it's a commentary.
Thank you very much.
Put it out.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you all, and I just I fell in love with Brazil when I was there, and I hope I'm gonna come back to see again Sao Paulo and Rio, and especially Ilha Grande, where I spent amazing week after um, Sao Paulo Biennale and week in Rio. And I hope I'm gonna come at some point and meet you, maybe at the museum or maybe other places. Looking forward to come back. And if you ever want to visit Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg, feel free to connect us and also send us any good ideas, tips of how or who to interview or what to write about in terms of interesting creative actions in Brazil and Latin America.
Jean wants to
Thank
say.
you. Okay,
So I
sure.
have to say one more thing. When you have an opportunity back in Brazil, I invite you to come for us house. We have a house in Rio, have a house in São Paulo, Brasília, Belo Horizonte, and we have an us house like a gallery too. We do an exhibition of those walls. Karini, show him that art. For example, the a graffiti of Suki. Suki is a graffiti of a neighborhood here. We have one favela near here. He grow here, and this Indian blue Indian is an intervention of another graffiti. Crânio, he's from São Paulo and do it in all the world. He's a great artist too, and you are invited to come here and there's a space and do your art for here too.
Just for you to know, Mike, have a better background. Our thing actually started more related with the music in Brazil. There was a moment about 10 years ago when we have the collapse of the music industry, and this difficult generate actually an opportunity once that a new generation of cultural producers get a chance to propose new models of organization. So internet was coming, Brazil as a reality. I think that is another similar characteristic between Brazil and Russia. They are two very big countries. So internet, it was very best to us to give us the chance to be in touch with people from our same country, but that lives very far away. And once that the country is big, you have also a very intense cultural diversity. So once that people started to be more in touch, they were exchanging, they were doing this thing that we are doing now, exchanging statistical concept language, but they were also sharing a lot what we call the social technologies, which means basically methodologies to work together in group networks. And so for us, this thing on live and work in the same space is much more than something that is philosophical or idealistic. It's just a matter of strategy. It's cheaper like this, and once we found it as a solution and we spread it more cultural experience all over Brazil, people started to get more organized this way. So what we have today, almost 10 years after that we started the experience, it's a network of houses, spaces like that in lots of different cities, giving support to their whole different language in the local scene, being used as a cultural center where shows are happening, expos, virtual meetings like this, small congress where people can be hosted during some days. So this is where this thing is happening now. This is with what we're getting connected. So as I said in the beginning, and as Gian said again, it will be a pleasure to us to see how we keep making next things together.
Okay.
Sounds really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Спасибо большое. Спасибо on Russian. Obrigado.
It's really late in Central Europe. Now I'm going to sleep. Good night.
It's a shame that you're not here to eat the Russian pancakes and drink the Brazilian beer with us now.
Yeah. Oh.